Hi there Waltoneers, I'm Jack and this is DSNY Newscast, and today I want to talk about the Magic Kingdom, or to be more specific, the massive expansion that's currently taking place at the Magic Kingdom. As we all know that within this expansion we're going to be getting the Piston Peak National Park environment from the world of Cars within one section, and then within the larger section of the expansion we're going to be getting the much anticipated Villains Land at the Magic Kingdom. But when discussing all of this, I feel like there's been a sort of missing piece to this whole kind of Magic Kingdom expansion puzzle that really hasn't been spoken about all too much, but that's what I want to focus in and talk about today. And yes, this video is going to be a bit more speculative in nature, but I do feel like it's worthwhile shining a light on this topic just in case. And the reason for that is because I feel like the answer might just be found in Disney Cruise Line. Now, I know that sounds like a weird segue to make in a video where the thumbnail is all about the Magic Kingdom, but trust me, it's going to make sense. As you see, recently I had the opportunity to go on the christening sailing for the Disney Destiny, which is Disney Cruise Line's latest and greatest ship in their fleet. And despite not really covering that much here on the channel, I'm a big fan of Disney Cruise Line. I've been on the Disney Magic, the Disney Wonder, and also the Disney Dream. But this isn't going to be a review of the Disney Destiny, but I came away with three major observations about this ship and how it plays back into the Disney parks. And the third point is the one which I really want to focus in on this video. But the first one is about the entertainment on board. As you see, the Disney Destiny is a ship that's themed to heroes and villains, and what we're going to be getting at Magic Kingdom in a few years' time is Villains Land. And there were these new kinds of experiences that Disney were calling meet and play experiences, where you could really interact with the villains in a way that a traditional meet and greet, where you come in and take a photo with the villain, isn't typical. And it feels like they're kind of play testing in many ways. At least that's the feeling that I got for what we could potentially see within Villains Land in a few years' time at the Magic Kingdom. And the three kind of villains experiences they had, one was Dr. Facilier's Parlor. And this was a very intimate experience where not many people were allowed in the room. This was Dr. Facilier kind of reading the cards and interacting with guests in a way which you wouldn't get in a traditional meet and greet. But then there was also another experience which was treble making with Cruella on board the Destiny. And this was a unique experience where you were sat within the DeVille's lounge and Cruella came storming in and spoke to the two kind of storytellers on board the ship and told them to come up with a new song for Cruella DeVille instead of the one that Roger wrote. And then you've also got Under Her Spell, a Maleficent encounter. And this was Maleficent on stage for around 10 minutes, holding court in many ways and talking to her subjects in an environment which, it was on the Saga stage on board the Destiny, and it's limited in terms of what they can do in terms of theming. But it's a showing that this character and this meet and greet could be something more interactive with the crowd. And I feel like they really are trying to build out the villains catalogue of characters for a new type of interactive experience to make the whole of Villains Land feel more alive and try and rectify the errors that were made with Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, which was the lack of characters throughout the entire land when it opened. Then the next observation that I have to make, which relates back to the parks again and actually Villains Land, is to do with Project EXO. Now, this was a research and development project that began in Imagineering back in 2020, and we saw it first shown in 2021 in that kind of preview video of the technology, and then in 2022 it made its debut in the parks in a real-life setting with the Smart Hulk character within Avengers Campus in 2022, and it was an incredibly impressive character to be able to see Smart Hulk brought to life in a larger-than-life way than you've ever seen before for these kind of characters. But a few years have passed and they've continually made advancements with Project EXO, and now we're seeing it within the Disney Hercules show that they have on board the Disney Destiny. The Ice Titan that you can see is 13 feet tall and the Rock Titan is 9 feet tall. The actual exoskeleton frame itself is roughly around 40 pounds of weight, and then they added around 70 pounds of theming to that skeleton, but all of that weight is transferred down to the ground and into the floor. So They have way more movement and mobility than traditional larger-than-life characters like this. But one observation that I kind of walked away from, kind of continually thinking about, if this is what they're able to do 3 years on from what we saw with Smart Hulk, what are we going to see in a few years' time when potentially a Villains Land opens? And the reason why I come to Villains Land is because, you know, within the Disney villains catalogue, there's larger-than-life villains, ones which are huge, and the one which I keep coming back to is Chernobog, and how fantastic it would be if in a few years' time, if the advancements are made, that they could bring an even larger character to life like Chernobog in a meet and greet setting using Project Exo. But then the other thing is, with this exoskeleton technology of Project Exo, they're using 3D printed structural lattices and carbon fibre and all different types of techniques to take a lot of the weight out of these huge figures. And if you were to couple that with all of the latest advancements they've made with audio animatronic technology, then what could we see in terms of a massive villain within these attractions? You know, I'm thinking Maleficent's Dragon, I'm thinking, you know, Chernobog, something like that, in terms of an animatronic, because we all saw what happened with the Yeti inside Expedition Everest, and that figure is huge, but it's also a very heavy figure. And if Disney's able to have a lot of movement without much weight using the Project Exo and AA technology together, could we be able to see that in some sort of grand form within Villains Land? It's very speculative, but I think it's something that we need to start thinking about in terms of what they could bring to life within Villains Land. And then we come to my third and final observation regarding the Disney Destiny and the Disney parks, and it's to do with the Haunted Mansion Parlor. But before we do dive into that, I just want to say thanks to the sponsor of today's video, Aviron Active. Now, something I've never really mentioned here on the channel is that I'm an avid runner. I love running, and in actual fact, I pretty much run nearly every single day since I was around 14 years old. But recently, I've been switching up from running outdoors to running on Aviron's Victory treadmill instead. And what's unique about this is that it has an ultra low profile 4-inch running deck, which means that because you are quite literally closer to the ground, it creates a more natural running experience. And also, built within the Cloud Stride running deck, there's 6 shock absorbers, which means that whether you're going to be walking or running on the treadmill, it's going to be easier on your joints. And on top of that, it's also capable of doing a 12% incline as well. But easily the thing I like most about this treadmill is that it has a 22-inch touchscreen built within the unit. And also, Aviron have also packed this screen full of content. They've got everything from coach classes to guided workouts to these scenic destination running paths that you can do, which I've really enjoyed doing as well. And there's Netflix, HBO Max, and of course Disney Plus, so you can watch all the latest Disney movies and TV shows whilst working out at the same time. And they've also got the full YouTube app experience, so you could potentially load up a tour of a Disney park and walk around it virtually before you're walking around it literally on your Disney vacation, or maybe just watch one of your favourite Disney YouTubers as well whilst working out. So whether you're training for a Run Disney event or you just want to get in rope drop shape, say goodbye to boring workouts and hello to better habits with Aviron's Victory treadmill, with the link down below in the description box. And if you use the offer code DSNY50, you can get $50 off all of their products. Thanks to Aviron Active for sponsoring today's video. Now, a few years ago, I did a video where it was a kind of armchair imagineering of why I felt like there needs to be a Haunted Mansion restaurant at the Magic Kingdom, and that was in 2022. But then in 2023, Disney announced the Haunted Mansion Parlor coming to the Disney Treasure. And then in 2024, we saw the Haunted Mansion Parlor debut on board the Disney Treasure. And then in 2025, we've seen the Haunted Mansion Parlor duplicated, and, you know, it's there on the Disney Destiny in 2025. And so clearly, Haunted Mansion Parlor is a huge success. And after finally being able to step foot into the Haunted Mansion Parlor, it's easy to see why. It had incredibly detailed placemaking, layered storytelling, brilliant sound design, and lighting effects throughout. And it really did feel like you were truly within the Haunted Mansion, just sat there within one of the rooms within the Haunted Mansion, but being able to have a drink and just sit there and enjoy the atmosphere of the Haunted Mansion. And it really was a 10 out of 10 in terms of immersion level for this kind of themed experience. But when I was sat there just drinking my death certificate drink, taking in the atmosphere, I couldn't help but feel like this is way too successful to just stay on Disney Cruise Line, and the next logical step for this has to be the Disney parks. And there is actually an interesting pattern that's going on here, as in recent years Disney Cruise Line with the new class of ships have kind of mirrored some of the Disney parks, as you've got the Skipper Canteen in the Magic Kingdom that opened in 2015, and then you have the Skipper Society on board the Disney Treasure last year in 2024. And then you've got the Beacon Barrel that opened at the Magic Kingdom this year, and then you've got Cask and Cannon, which is a Pirates of the Caribbean themed pub on board the Disney Destiny. But if we're to look at it in reverse to begin with, how the parks can influence the cruises, I think from all of the different attractions that we've got within the Disney parks, the ones that would make most sense in the next class of ships when they begin building those, I think it's logical that we might see a Tower of Terror themed Tip Top Club on one of the cruise ships. I think that would be fantastic if they did that in the same kind of style as the Haunted Mansion Parlor in a very small environment. But I think that would work to kind of feel like you're sat there having a drink in the lobby of Tower of Terror with that kind of music playing. And then Big Thunder Mountain could work as a themed lounge on board one of these ships as well, sort of a Lucky Nugget lounge or saloon on board. And you could have a whole backstory of Barnabas T. Bullion having his own lounge on board the actual ship itself, and it would be a great way to tie that back into the parks. And you could have, you know, dynamite daiquiris and you know, explosion cocktails and stuff like that for that kind of Big Thunder Mountain Lucky Nugget lounge experience on board one of the ships. And I also think for bar experience, if you look at the Periscope pub on board the Treasure in 2024, which was themed to 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, and in that space they had screens above that showed the giant squid and the sea above you, so you're like on the 20,000 Leagues attraction. I think that could very well work in the same sort of format but for Space Mountain, and have a kind of Starport 71 pub or bar on board one of the cruise ships as well, have the iconic Space Mountain music playing throughout the bar, and you could have those same sort of screens on the top of the ceiling, but have it be a star field and show maybe Space Mountain zipping by above you. So, you know, there are other opportunities to bring the parks to the cruises. But now let's talk about bringing the cruises to the parks with the Haunted Mansion Parlor, as there is an argument to be made that this is so successful that I think the parks is the next logical step for this whole thing, as already Disney Weddings have said that on board the Disney Destiny, they're going to be opening up the Haunted Mansion Parlor as a Disney Weddings venue, as a bookable space where you can actually have up to 25 guests, and you can say "Till Death Do Us Part" within the Haunted Mansion Parlor from May 14th, 2026 on board the Disney Destiny. And then the other thing is Disney Parks versus Disney Cruise Line. They're two different audiences in many ways. And then if we're to crunch the numbers very quickly, this whole thing, obviously it's just the Treasure and the Destiny that have the Haunted Mansion Parlor. And each one of those ships have a capacity of 4,000 passengers. And the Treasure does roughly 7 night sailings, so 52 sailings a year. But the Destiny will be beginning with 3 and 4 night sailings, and then might start doing some longer sailings as well next year. But roughly, if we were to approximate how many passengers the Treasure and the Destiny can accommodate within 1 year alone, it's roughly around 500,000 passengers. And that is if each one of those ships is operating at absolute max capacity for every single sailing throughout the year. Whereas if you take into consideration the Magic Kingdom, the most visited theme park in the entire world in 2024, it had 17.8 million guests go through its gates in 2024 alone. So there's a massive 34x difference between those who can experience it on the Treasure and the Destiny and those who could experience it in the parks. And you've also got to take into consideration that it would take a few years for it to be built and open, so therefore they've got the exclusivity on the cruise line for the next few years. And clearly Disney isn't being too precious about trying to keep it that much of an exclusive, since they've already begun to duplicate it across to different ships in the fleet. So it's proved to be that popular that they're doing that already. So I think the next logical step will be probably the Disney parks for a Haunted Mansion bar or restaurant. But then, with all that being said, is there any clue-based speculation from what we've seen so far within the plans. And I've got to say that within the first piece of artwork that was released just after D23 in 2024 for Piston Peak National Park, we didn't know it was called that at the time, all the way over to the right-hand side of this piece of artwork, there's this kind of pathway that kind of feeds all the way back on over towards what is most likely Villains Land. And it really kind of juts out into the basin of where Rivers America is. And all the way over there on the right hand side, if you zoom in, it looks like there's something in that location, and it's hard to make out exactly what it is because of the style used within the artwork here. But it could be something as simple as, let's say, water, but to me personally, it looks like there's some sort of structure being hidden behind the trees there, as it looks like there's a green roof to the structure. So potentially it could be an extended queue to the Haunted Mansion. But then that also poses the question, why do they need more of an extended queue for the Haunted Mansion if they've already got quite a sizable queue space for the Haunted Mansion as it currently stands? And maybe they might be reworking the queue space because they're going to be building something next to the Haunted Mansion in terms of, I don't know, maybe a parlor or a restaurant. And at the risk of perhaps reading too much into this, if we also look at the more recent artwork for Piston Peak, we can see that that rough location in the bottom right hand corner is curiously obscured by the placement of the character. And look, this is all just speculation at this current time. But I just wanted to make this point because also when you look at the drainage permits from the South Florida Water Management District for the stormwater drainage system for this whole expansion area, none of the drainage lines go directly through this kind of area within the artwork, which would be to the side of Haunted Mansion. So I personally feel like they could potentially put a building right there to the side of Haunted Mansion if they wanted to, in that particular location, and have it be very similar to the way that Beacon Barrel works, where it's right next to the Pirates of the Caribbean attraction, and it would act as a fantastic buffer between Piston Peak National Park and Villains Land, with the Haunted Mansion jutting out more into that kind of expansion space. And we know that with the Haunted Mansion Parlor, it's clearly so successful. It's just a license to just print money in many ways. And oftentimes, if you look at Disney's decision making, it is a business and you have to follow the money. And clearly, this is making a lot of money. And so I feel like it would be too good not to bring it to the Disney parks in some form. And I think the reason why we might have not have got it announced so far is because they might be holding back on it to announce at D23 next year in August in 2026 as a big announcement on stage. As in 2024 we had a lot of the big announcements, the big projects that were announced, started and now are under construction around the world. So next year at D23 it's going to be a lot of smaller updates on existing projects, but they're going to want probably one or two bigger announcements which will get the fan base in the arena at the Honda Center to really feel like they've got their money's worth from their ticket for D23. And I feel like an announcement of a Haunted Mansion parlor or restaurant in the parks themselves would be that kind of reaction that they would be wanting to go for in D23 at the parks presentation. And then oftentimes Disney's a business, and if there's money to be made here, why wouldn't they with this kind of experience? And personally, after experiencing the Haunted Mansion Parlor on board the Destiny, the whole experience of it being a bar was nice, but it was also very crowded within that environment, and I feel like it would work much better across a kind of restaurant dining experience where people are seated instead of people being stood near your chairs and like crowding the space and kind of removing some of that eerie atmosphere. If you were to have a seated table service environment, you could do a lot more with the illusioneering effects within that restaurant and really play into it. As with Beacon Bell, it's a fantastic experience where the cast members really play along with the whole environment when the mermaids start doing their singing and they kind of pretend that the ship is rocking and stuff like that. They really play along with it, and they could have a lot more of that within a Haunted Mansion restaurant within the Magic Kingdom to really flesh out that kind of Haunted Mansion storytelling within the actual experience itself. So with all of that being said for today, hopefully you've enjoyed this speculative look at potentially what might also be included within the expansion area. I think it personally makes too much sense for them not to do it, so I wanted to do this video today to start to point people in that direction just in case next year we get that announcement. And with that being said for today, it's over to you, the Waltoneers, as I would like to know, what are your thoughts and opinions on this topic? Do you think Disney may bring the Haunted Mansion Parlor to the parks, and are you in favour of it being just a bar or a restaurant as part of this experience? And if you could bring any other attraction to the Disney Cruise Line in a themed bar experience, what would it be and how would it work? And of course, if you've enjoyed this video for today, be sure to subscribe down below, hit the notification bell, and also check out the rest of the videos on this channel. And also a massive thanks to the official Waltoneer Club over on Patreon for always supporting this channel. It's greatly appreciated. And also a massive shout out to the official Waltoneer Gold members that you can see here on the screen right now, along with official Waltoneer Diamond members JC Russell, Justin Tupper, Noah Anderson, and Tim Parsons. And with that being said for today, I've been Jack, you've been you, and I'll see you real soon.